Welcome everyone, join us today as we delve into the life and legacy of Denny Doherty, the captivating voice behind the Mamas and the Papas. From his early beginnings, to his rise to fame, he left an enduring impact on the world of music. So let's dive in. Denny Doherty, born Dennis Gerard Stephen Doherty in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada. The youngest of 5 siblings, his parents, Fred and Catherine Doherty, were Irish immigrants who moved to Canada in the early 1900s. Denny had 3 elder brothers Paul, Doug, and Jack, and an older sister named Maureen. Denny grew up in a deeply Catholic family in a Halifax neighbourhood known for its prison, slaughterhouse, and city dump. His father worked as a dock labourer, while his mother was a homemaker with a spiritual side. Despite his father's suggestion to become a machinist's apprentice, Denny's passion for music led him to pursue a career in the industry instead. In 1956, Denny and his friends Richard Sheehan, Eddie Thibodeau, and Mike O'Connell formed a band called the Hepsters, but the group disbanded 2 years later. In 1960, at the age of 19, Doherty started a new folk group called the Colonials, still in Halifax, with Pat LaCroix and Richard Byrne. After several months, Columbia Records signed the group, prompting them to change their name to the Halifax 3. The band recorded 2 LPs in 1963, titled The Halifax 3, and San Francisco Bay Blues. They had a minor hit with The Man Who Wouldn't Sing Along with Mitch, but the group eventually disbanded in 1965. In 1963, Denny developed a close friendship with Cass Elliot, who was then performing with the Big Three. While on tour with the Halifax 3, Denny met John Phillips and his wife, model Michelle Gilliam. A few months later, the Halifax 3 disbanded, leaving Denny and their accompanist, Zal Yanofsky, stranded and penniless in Hollywood. Elliot persuaded her manager to hire them, leading Denny and Yanofsky to join the Big Three, expanding the group to 4 members. Shortly thereafter, the band added more members and rebranded as the Mugwumps. However, financial difficulties led to the Mugwumps' dissolution. Yanofsky went on to co-found the Loving Spoonful with John Sebastian. Around this time, Phillips's new band, the New Journeymen, required a replacement for tenor Marshall Brickman, who had left to pursue a television writing career. Denny, then unemployed, stepped in to fill the vacancy. After the New Journeymen disbanded in early 1965, they formed a new band, which became the Magic Circle. The final addition to the band was Cass Elliot, Denny's former bandmate. Phillips initially had reservations about Elliot, concerned about her deep voice fitting into his arrangements, her weight potentially hindering the band's success, and their clashing personalities. Elliot, who struggled with obesity throughout her life, harbored deep insecurities about her appearance, adding to the challenge. By September 1965, the group signed a recording contract with Dunhill Records and rebranded as the Mamas and the Papas, inspired by the Hells Angels, whose female associates were called Mamas. They soon began recording their debut album, If You Can Believe Your Eyes and Ears. Their song Creek Alley briefly recounts this history. Denny sang lead on California Dreaming, which was released in December 1965, ahead of the debut album's early 1966 release. With the song peaking at number 4 in the United States, and number 23 in the United Kingdom. The band's second album, The Mamas and the Papas, is sometimes referred to as Cass, John, Michelle, Denny, with Denny's first name misspelled. During recording, Michelle Phillips's affair with Gene Clark of the Byrds came to light, causing a disruption. John Phillips had already forgiven her for an earlier liaison with Denny, which inspired the song I Saw Her Again, co-written by Denny and John. After Michelle's affair with Clark, John Phillips decided to fire her. With legal and record label consultation, Michelle was expelled from the group on June 28, 1966. She was swiftly replaced by Jill Gibson, the girlfriend of the band's producer, Lou Adler. Gibson's tenure as a mama lasted just 2.5 months. Due to fan demand, Michelle was reinstated in August 1966, while Gibson received a lump sum for her contributions. The band finished their second album by re-recording, replacing, or overlaying Michelle's vocals over Gibson's studio tracks. The Mamas and the Papas album peaked at number 4 in the US and number 24 in the UK, sustaining the band's success. The single I Saw Her Again, released in June 1966, reached number 5 in the US and number 11 in the UK. After finishing their East Coast tour, during which their co-headlining band, Webster's New Word, observed them performing while evidently high, and tumbling onto the stage, the group immediately began work on their third album, The Mamas and the Papas Deliver, in the autumn of 1966. The first single from the album, Look Through My Window, reached number 24 in the US. The second single, Dedicated to the One I Love, released in February 1967, performed better, peaking at number 2 in both the US and the UK, boosting album sales. By June 1967, tensions within the group became evident during their lackluster performance at the Monterey International Pop Festival. The band's rehearsal was inadequate, partly because John, Michelle Phillips, and Lou Adler were busy organizing the event. Also because Denny had arrived last minute from the Virgin Islands, and his heavy drinking following his affair with Michelle. Despite this, the Mamas and the Papas regrouped for a memorable show at the Hollywood Bowl in August, with Jimi Hendrix opening, which John and Michelle Phillips later described as the peak of the band's career, noting that such a moment would never be repeated. Following a successful third studio album, a troubled trip to England in October 1967 further fractured the already strained group dynamics. Elliott temporarily quit after a hurtful remark from John Phillips, although she later returned to finish recording for the band's fourth album, The Papas and the Mamas, which was eventually released in May 1968. This album marked the band's first failure to achieve gold status or crack the top 10 in the US. Dunhill Records released Elliott's solo rendition of Dream a Little Dream of Me from the album as a single in June 1968. The song reached number 12 in the US and number 11 in the UK, becoming their highest charting single in the UK compared to the US. This success solidified Elliott's determination to pursue a solo career, and by the end of 1968, it was evident that the group had disbanded. Dunhill Records continued to release compilations to fulfill contractual obligations, including The Best of the Mamas and the Papas, Farewell to the First Golden Era in 1967, Golden Era Volume 2 in 1968, 16 of their greatest hits in 1969, and the live album from Monterey in 1970. Despite the label's efforts, the band's final album of new material, People Like Us, was released in November 1971. The album and its single, Step Out, both struggled on the charts, marking the end of the Mamas and the Papas. After the band's breakup, Elliott and Denny maintained their friendship. Elliott, enjoying a successful solo career, once asked Denny to marry her, but he declined. During this time, Denny released a few solo LPs and singles, notably 1971's What You Gonna Do, and 1974's Waiting for a Song, although the latter was not released in the United States. This album featured background vocals by Michelle Phillips and Cass Elliot, marking Elliott's last recordings before her untimely death. She passed away in her sleep from heart failure on July 29, 1974, following a successful run of shows in London. Denny was deeply affected by her death and attended her funeral in early August, alongside John and Michelle Phillips. In 1975, Denny ventured into theatre with a rocky start in John Phillips's Man on the Moon. By 1977, he returned to his roots in Halifax, Nova Scotia, performing Shakespeare at Neptune Theatre under John Neville's guidance. This experience led to television opportunities, including hosting Denny's show, which aired for one season in 1978. In 1982, Denny joined a revived version of The New Mamas and the Papas, featuring John Phillips, his daughter Mackenzie, and Elaine McFarlane, touring and performing both classic hits and new songs written by John. Denny later created and produced an off-Broadway show, Dream a Little Dream, narrating his perspective on the story of the Mamas and the Papas. The show received positive reviews, partly as a response to John's PBS documentary Straight Shooter, the true story of John Phillips and the Mamas and the Papas. It featured the group's music and highlighted his relationship with Cass Elliot. In 1996, Denny was inducted into the Canadian Music Hall of Fame. He also hosted and voiced characters in the children's program Theodore Tugboat and appeared in various TV series, including 22 episodes of the drama Pit Pony. In 2004, Denny appeared on Sharon, Lois and Bram's 25th anniversary concert special, performing California Dreaming, and Who Put the Bomb with the trio. One of his final appearances was in the Canadian TV series Trailer Park Boys, Season 7 Episode 10, as FBI Special Agent Ryan Shockneck. The episode, filmed shortly before his death in early 2007, is dedicated to him in the end credits. On a personal note, Denny was a father to 3 children. He had a daughter, Jessica Woods, from a brief first marriage, and 2 children, a daughter named Emberly and a son named John, from his 20-year marriage to his second wife Jeanette, who passed away from ovarian cancer in 1998. Throughout the 1960s and 1970s, Denny struggled with alcoholism, but he achieved sobriety in the early 1980s and remained sober for the rest of his life. Tragically, on January 19, 2007, Denny passed away at his home in Mississauga, Ontario. While the immediate cause was not known, he had experienced kidney failure following surgery for an abdominal aortic aneurysm. His funeral service took place at St. Stephen's Roman Catholic Church in Halifax, and he was laid to rest at the Gate of Heaven Cemetery in Lower Sackville, Nova Scotia. Following his death, a documentary titled Here I Am was released, detailing his life. The title song was a collaboration with blues guitarist James Anthony. And there you have it. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the life of Denny Doherty. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe for more stories about the legends of music. Take care and bye for now.